everybody, my name's Ashley. I'm from Philadelphia, and welcome to the Daily Reflection podcast. And every day was the worst day of my life, and then the next day would happen and I would feel like, no, this is the worst day of my life, and the same day would happen over and over again, and I just felt so hopeless because anything I put in front of my sobriety is the first thing that I would lose. I'm not a sick person caring for other sick people. I'm a well person trying to help other people, when they're not well and sick. So if you come to AA and you're looking to stop drinking, even if you think it's only temporary, just stick and stay for a while. Listen, be open.
Welcome to the Daily Reflection Podcast with your hosts Michael L. and Lee M. On this show, we try to bring some inspiration through interviews with members of the recovery community. We are not affiliated with any 12-step or recovery programs, but you will hear them mentioned throughout the course of an interview. On today's show, Ashley C. from Philadelphia, sharing on the concept of a full and thankful heart. Before we get to the show, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or audible.com, they give you the ability to provide a rating, and what this does is it gives you the ability to give us some feedback and let us know what you think of the show, but it also increases the ability of our podcast to be found by new listeners. Would greatly appreciate that. We hope you enjoy this episode. Good morning, Lee. How are you?
Good morning, Mike. I'm doing great this morning. How are you?
Fantastic. Hey, what's on the schedule for today?
So today is March 25th, and super excited to let you all know that we have Ashley C. from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in with us this morning, and she's here to talk to us about today's daily reflection, which is a full and thankful heart.
Well, fantastic. Ashley, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on the podcast.
It's great to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Well, we start the show in the same way every day. We ask the guest to read the daily reflection for the day. Can you get us started?
Sure. Today is March 25th, a full and thankful heart. I try hard to hold fast to the truth that a full and thankful heart cannot entertain great conceits. When brimming with gratitude, one's heartbeat must surely result in outgoing love, the finest emotion that we can ever know. As Bill sees it, page 37. I believe that we in Alcoholics Anonymous are fortunate in that we are constantly reminded of the need to be grateful and how important gratitude is to our sobriety. I am truly grateful for the sobriety God has given me through the AA program, and I am glad I can give back what was freely given to me. I am grateful not only for sobriety, but for the quality of life my sobriety has brought. God has been gracious enough to give me sober days and a life blessed with peace and contentment, as well as the ability to give and receive love and the opportunity to serve others in our fellowship, my family, and my community. For all of this, I have a full and thankful heart.
Love that. Lots of gratitude in that reading. Ashley, what's your sobriety date?
My sobriety date is February 8th, 2014.
Awesome. And as you read this, what comes to mind for you first?
For me, gratitude is a huge part of my sobriety.
Before you even got into AA, did you feel like a grateful person? What was it like for you before you even got in?
Before I got sober, all I would do was go to work and be by myself and just feel like every day was Groundhog's Day. And every day was the worst day of my life. And then the next day would happen and I would feel like, no, this is the worst day of my life. And the same day would happen over and over again. And I just felt like, when is this going to end? And I just felt so hopeless.
And what was it like? What made you decide to come to AA?
Drinking enabled me to be whoever I wanted to be. As I got out of graduated college and got into being a young professional, when I would hang out with other young professionals, they would see how I would drink and they would be like, what's wrong with her? Why does she act like that? That's when I looked for another way to be who I wanted to be when I was drinking, but I would still have more control than what I did when I was drinking. And so I started mixing other substances. It got to a point where I didn't have friends anymore. I didn't have like a lot of people who cared about me. Like I just shared about, every day was like Groundhog's Day, like the worst day of my life. And it was just like so monotonous. And I felt so empty inside that, eventually my outside of work life clashed with my in work life, my professional life. It clashed, and it was brought to my attention that I needed to do something. And so I was given a choice of going to rehab. And so the grace from that day, it was so terrifying and so frightening. I chose to get help. And on the way to the rehab, I was like at work, I'd been up for over 24 hours, and somebody from the rehab came and picked me up from the hospital I worked at. And, he's like, just go in with an open mind. And that's really like what I've done from the very beginning.
Yeah, we all need to have an open mind. And it makes me think like there was a lot going on in your life and you had a job and you were trying to hold everything down. And somebody said something the other day that really resonated with me. And it seems like it's apropos in the moment. Even God can't fill hands that are full. So sometimes he empties them first. I mean, does that resonate for you?
Yeah, it does. It was almost like a weight had been lifted off of my shoulders by having, I didn't think it was an opportunity at the time, but this opportunity to go to rehab and receive outside help. I had been caring for all these really sick people. And at the same time, like I was so sick, going in there and having other people take care of me. It was just like a end of the spectrum that I've never experienced. And I've been sober since then, and that was a little over 7 years ago. I'm a slow learner, so I've made mistakes. I'm not perfect. Yeah, I keep learning along the way.
What was it like when you came in? Did you find a sponsor right away? Did you get into the steps right away? How did that unfold for you?
I went to rehab. I wasn't sure if I had a drinking problem. But I was, open to their suggestions. I attended AA meetings in the rehab, and when I got out, continued to follow the suggestions I was given. I went to a meeting after inpatient rehab, and that day I had a false positive drug test. I got fired from my job, and I went to the meeting and I raised my hand and I just broke down sobbing. And I don't know if anybody believed me or understood me, because I was so upset. After that, they sent like a piece of paper around with everybody's name and number. And somebody came up to me after the meeting and they gave me the list and introduced themselves. And then another person introduced herself and was like, do you want to walk with me for a little bit? And I was like, sure. We just walked a couple blocks together, and she asked if I was working with anybody, and I said no. And she was like, well, let's meet up, and I'll be your temporary sponsor until you find somebody. And so the second day out of rehab, that happened. And it was the first full day out of rehab. And she was my first sponsor for my first year. And she was great. She was exactly what I needed. And I've had a sponsor ever since.
The reflection talks about transitioning from gratitude to being able to experience love, and then being able to be of service, the opportunity to serve others. Has that shown up in your program of recovery?
Yes. Service is a huge part of my recovery. Being in the healthcare field, I felt compelled right away to try to bridge the two different areas of my life. So service started for me chairing meetings, setting up chairs, making coffee, sharing. I shared every meeting I was at in recovery. One of my sponsors told me that showing up regularly and sharing, letting people know like where I'm at in life, that is an opportunity to be in service. Always reaching out to new people, finding, the first year I was in AA, I reached out, I tried new things. It was like I was the yes person. Like you asked me to do something, it was always a yes. Like I met a lot of new people in my first year of sobriety. One of the women that I was introduced to early on, she moved away from Philadelphia, but I still am in touch with her. She introduced me to a committee called the Cooperation with the Professional Community. And I started going to that less than 6 months sober. At that time, they needed volunteers to take students. So I went to the meeting, found out what they did, followed somebody so I knew like how other people do that. And then I started doing that right away. And that's still something that I do. And I go to meetings, I reach out to newcomers. Now that I'm working back in a hospital, I have the opportunity to work with drug addicts and alcoholics. And so I can apply the AA principles and what I know from AA into that part of my life as well. So service is like reaching all areas of my life on like a daily basis.
That's great. And I just wanted to point out, so you mentioned CPC. I'm familiar with the committee, the cooperation with the professional community. We did have Natasha, who's the director for the Philadelphia area chapter, the committee in Philadelphia. And that's episode 63 if people want to learn a little bit more about that. But thanks for your service there.
Earlier, you were asking what this brought up for me. It's talking a lot about gratitude. And one of the things that I thought about immediately after I read this passage was one of my previous sponsors in the first year of my sobriety asked me like what I was grateful for. And I listed a few things, but I didn't list my sobriety. And so she just looked at me curiously and asked if I was grateful for my sobriety and that I was sober. And without hesitation, I was like, of course. I'm surprised I didn't say that. Her immediate reply was that it should be the first thing out of my mouth, because anything I put in front of my sobriety is the first thing that I will lose. It's been a couple years and I still remember that. You hear it in the rooms all the time. Anything that I put in front of my recovery is the first thing that I will lose. So in early sobriety, gratitude looked different for me. It was hard to find what I was grateful for. I was part of like a big email list, a big email chain that went around, and people every day would email like 50 people, like things they were grateful for. And it was hard to come up with things in early sobriety. And since I've stayed sober, it's like always so easy for me to come up with things. My sobriety is definitely the first thing that comes to mind.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love that story too, because I think everybody's the same in early sobriety. We're just kind of like, I don't know, answering the questions and miss like the obvious things. But in the reflection, it says, I am grateful not only for sobriety, which you just talked about, but for the quality of life that my sobriety has brought. God has been gracious enough to give me sober days and a life blessed with peace and contentment, as well as the ability to give and receive love and the opportunity to serve others. So what's your life like now as compared to the way it was before you got sober?
So the AA promises have all come true for me. They say that a life beyond your wildest dreams. And for me, all I wanted was a normal life. I wanted to not be so hopeless, to not want to be dead every day. And that's what I have today. Like, I love living life. I love my job most days. I have like a normal life, and it feels so great to say that. At the same time, it sounds, I don't know, I just love having the normal life. I was able to buy my first house. I have my family, and I have a partner who loved me unconditionally. I have a job, like I said, that I love to go to, and I'm good at it now. I'm not a sick person caring for other sick people. I'm a well person trying to help other people, when they're not well and sick. AA is a huge part of my life still. I don't go to meetings every day like I used to, but I go most days of the week. I also see a therapist who I've seen her for years, and she's such a huge help to me.
So what advice would you have for the newcomer or somebody who may not even be in the program yet?
I feel like people who end up in AA who want to stop drinking, it's not an accident that they ended up there. It's not a coincidence. So if you come to AA and you're looking to stop drinking, even if you think it's only temporary, just stick and stay for a while. Listen, be open to what other people have to say, because that's what's worked for me. And I don't always listen the first time. Sometimes I have to hear it again and again and again. But eventually you'll hear something that you need to hear, and you'll relate to somebody that you didn't think that you would relate to on any level. Your life will get so much better.
That's so good. It really is. And that's my experience as well. Well, Ashley, I want to thank you for spending some time with us. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience before we wrap?
For me, something that has come up just recently is it's come up because I'm starting to work on my steps again, and I just did a fear inventory. Today in my life, I have peace and contentment, which is something that I never had when I wasn't sober. And 7 years into sobriety, I find that I still can be uncomfortable. It's hard to be present when I have peace and contentment in my life. Because when I was out there, I lived in the highs and the lows, and I always wanted to feel good and have all the positive emotions. And when I didn't have the positive emotions and feel good, it was like I didn't want to be alive and I didn't want to be there. So now, being 7 years into sobriety, I realized that life is more than that. You have to live through all the emotions and be present. So one of the fears that was on my fears inventory was that I will always be uncomfortable when I have peace and contentment in my life. In my heart, I feel that that's not true. I can be comfortable with peace and contentment, but that's why I keep coming back every day and not taking a drink one day at a time.
I love that. That is so awesome that you're doing a deep dive into your feelings about certain things. It just goes to show that no matter how much time we have in sobriety, like there's always so much more to learn and uncover and grow more. And I think it's a great message for everybody, that it's not like we get a year or two and then we're done, or we do the steps one time and then we're done. So it's just the gift that keeps on giving, I think. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, it was great to be here. Yeah, thank you so much for asking me.
Well, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks. It's been great.
Thanks so much to Ashley for stopping by, and thanks to you, the listeners. If you want to join us online, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/Daily Reflection Podcast. Just hit the 500 member mark in that community, and it's growing quickly. Join us there. You can find us on Twitter at Daily Reflector. You can read about recovery on our blog. There's quite a few authors now. That's at blog.dailyreflectionpodcast.com. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.